Today I present my first non-Star Wars matchup between two iconic wizards with a snake theme. However, this video will be structured more loosely than my mainline Star Wars Versus series. Though all Versus matchups made by all content creators are ultimately opinion pieces, I think it's fair to say that all of us attempt to construct strong arguments based on logic and research. This video, on the other hand, is quite explicitly a fluff piece that I threw together in an afternoon because I was bored, and is based primarily on information that I can recall off the top of my head. Furthermore, the script is actually rather old, having been written back when Game of Thrones was still relevant. So without any further ado, let's begin. The main commonality between the two is that both operated as terrorist cult leaders who started off as violent militants, but after achieving high status within their respective settings, shifted gears and exercised control through deception and subversion before making an 11th hour return to brute force when their power was undermined by a small group of lone wolf operatives. However, between violence and influence, both combatants explicitly favored one over the other. Lord Voldemort relied on raw destructive power to cow and intimidate his followers. His strategy was to subvert and co-opt the established authority by recruiting key figures within it, and then using his control of the system's resources to crush any remaining opposition. He was a calculating sociopath who played to the fears and desires of his followers, typically through theatrical shows of force. By contrast, Thulsa Doom used subtle persuasion to influence and indoctrinate his followers. His strategy was to use a sheer overwhelming number of brainwashed sleeper agents to assassinate established authority figures, which he achieved by targeting the relatives and children of these figures to ensure easy access. He originally developed this strategy as a warlord, using it to ensure the loyalty of his warriors and to make examples of anyone who attempted to resist him. As schemers and powermongers, Thulsa Doom was more successful. He was better at maintaining the loyalty of his followers, his cult had good organizational structure and a clear hierarchy, and his subtler methods meant that he could nip opposition in the bud before it became a problem, which makes his defeat and death at the hands of Conan the Barbarian decidedly ironic. Lord Voldemort's followers deserted him the second he was no longer the biggest player on the field. The lack of organizational structure within the Death Eaters meant that being deprived of his leadership and oversight would immediately throw the group into disarray, and his more militant approach drew a clear line in the sand and galvanized opposition. Even accounting for the smaller population base that Voldemort had to draw from, Voldemort never controlled as many followers as Thulsa, the ranks of the Death Eaters tallying up to perhaps 100 at most, while the Children of Doom numbered in the thousands, with new members joining daily. However, when it came to personal combat, Voldemort was vastly superior. Thulsa Doom's clean decapitation of Conan's mother speaks to skill as a swordsman, but it was this very instance that showed him how paltry violence was when compared to influence and control. Steel isn't strong, flesh is stronger. Otherwise, the only practical abilities that he demonstrated were the power to enchant snakes as magical arrows to seek out targets, and the ability to shapeshift into a snake. I'm detecting a theme here. While he likely did possess some conventional combative spells, his primary focus and defense were his powers of influence. Voldemort's mastery of occlumency and legilimency means that he can contend with Thulsa on an equal level, his favored tactic being to probe the minds of his enemies and deceive them or torment them with their worst memories. Otherwise, he had a wide variety of combative spells to draw from, his favorites including the Killing Curse, Fiend Fire, and Apparition. In battle, Voldemort functioned as a spell slinger, blitzing the defenses of his opponents while teleport spamming to outflank and outmaneuver. While I imagine that Thulsa Doom might be able to mount a defense against Voldemort, all he could do would be to delay the inevitable. Voldemort emphasizes tangible forms of domination and power, favoring murder and torture as a show of force, where Thulsa Doom sought to avoid direct conflict by subverting his adversary's will to fight. As I see it, the best arena for a hypothetical confrontation between these two would be King's Landing in Westeros, as this setting allows all of their relevant skills to play a role. As a political operator, Voldemort is most easily compared to Cersei Lannister. Motivated and cunning, he would claw his way to a position of prominence very quickly, either the power behind the Iron Throne or seated on it himself. However, due to his arrogant, capricious nature, he would follow the path of Cersei and undermine his own position very quickly, as his power base would be composed of sycophants and bootlickers with few genuinely loyal followers. Thulsa Doom would instead follow the example set by the High Sparrow and take his time to build a more secure and independent power base composed entirely of loyal followers, gaining access to those in power through their children. Then the day of doom would come, Voldemort's establishment would be torn down, and Voldemort himself would either be executed or paraded through the streets as a trophy. However, Voldemort would merely be down, not out. Even if Thulsa Doom killed him outright, Voldemort's Horcruxes would keep him alive. As in the Wizarding World of Britain, though it would take a few years and a couple tries, Voldemort's spirit would make contact with either a loyal follower or a weak-minded fool, and he would be resurrected. His aggressive drive would allow him to rebuild his power base very quickly, and now that Thulsa Doom is the established authority, he will have lost the element of surprise, and there would be clear lines drawn in the sand. Just as Cersei Lannister burned the High Sparrow and the Faith Militant in Wildfire, Voldemort would burn Thulsa Doom and his children in Fiendfire. Though Thulsa would be able to put up some resistance, he would almost certainly be overcome. My final conclusion on this matchup is this. Thulsa Doom is a more effective organizational leader and a much subtler schemer, but Voldemort dominates on the back of superior destructive power and a better insurance policy. However, while Voldemort can overcome this opponent with these attributes, everything about him is built around capitalizing on his high level of inherent power, and his final defeat proved that he can't overwhelm everyone. Nonetheless, I declare the heir of Slytherin the victor.